Hi, welcome at this webinar of Homerun and Ray. First of all, the webinar is in English and is pre-recorded. We do this so we can also answer your questions in the chat during the webinar. So please feel free to ask anything to me or Rita, and we will try to answer all the questions you have. So a funny thing, last month we worked on a survey together to find out what the struggles are for onboarding and hiring. And during that time, we had a lot of contact, Rita, and we were talking about stuff, what struggles I have as a founder or you have as an HR or people ops manager in the hiring and recruiting phase and also in the onboarding part. And we had quite a lot of tips to each other, and we thought let's share them with you. So we prepared some slides. It's quite a lot, so we tried to get through it in 30 minutes. If we don't make it, we will skip a couple of items, and we will send all the information afterwards, of course. So yeah, let's get started and dive in Hire to Inspire webinar, how to create an unforgettable candidate experience and boost retention. My name is, by the way, Theo from HoorayHR. I'm one of the founders. And maybe nice, Rita, to introduce yourself briefly.
Yes. Hi. Yeah, I'm Rita. I work at Homerun. I've been working in startup people operations for 7 or 8 years now, and I've always been responsible for setting up the whole employee experience from scratch, which includes hiring, obviously. Homerun, with Homerun, we're building a hiring tool, which means that I've also learned a lot over the years, making content, hiring people. We're a small company, so we never had an in-house recruiter. It's the same for you guys over at Hooray. So hiring can actually be for everyone, but I thought it might be nice to share some tips and tricks. So that's what we want to do today.
Nice.
But before we dive right in, I just wanted to share a little thing that I've introduced at Homerun a couple of years ago, because I know that people generally, especially in HR, are rushing through meetings a lot. You hurry from one thing to the next. You have a lot of small tasks to complete, and then you want to sit down for a meeting or some deep work or webinar like this one, but you're actually not fully here yet. So what we do at Homerun, we always take a little moment to arrive, which means just arriving into space, take a breath. And then once we're all here, we arrive and we get started with our heads in the right mindset. So let's get going.
Cool. Thanks for the introduction and good to be here, everyone.
Yeah, we won't be able to cover every topic related to hiring, obviously, in 30 minutes. So we've just chosen a couple of things. There's no magic bullet, but I always learn a lot when I hear how people actually do certain things. So we have a lot of practical examples. Like I said, we never had a dedicated recruiter, but we build a hiring tool, so we have enough knowledge. And HoorayHR is obviously building an HRIS, so you have knowledge in the phase that comes right after, right?
Yeah, we grow from 3 FTE to 16 in like 3 years. So yes, I did a lot of hiring the last the 3 years, which costs a lot of
And
time, but we will
onboarding.
back on that. And yes, the onboarding part, and that's what we're covering in Array as well. So that's also maybe a fun thing to share. So why do we collaborate? Homer is really an ATS platform, application tracking system, and we are an HRIS or an HR software. So you have recruiting, you have your onboarding workflows. So that's why we really collaborate together. And that's where it started to also make a survey together.
All right, let's dive right in. Because we asked in the survey what specific challenges companies are facing in the hiring process. And hiring can be really hard, let's be honest. We all know that. And what companies find hardest is actually finding qualified candidates. I've experienced that myself. You guys probably have experienced the same. But before those candidates can actually find you, I think it's really important to take a step back. So in next slide, I just wanted to talk a little bit about employer branding and understanding your company's appeal. Because a strong employer brand can really reflect who you are as a company and what it's like to work there. But it shouldn't be just marketing. So it should originate in your team, And it's really, really important to know what your employee value proposition is so that you know what you're actually offering to future candidates. Which is why storytelling in your job description is so important. I don't know if you have any company value that is like especially close to your heart, Theo, at Hooray, that you would like to say something about.
Yeah. We try a couple of things at the company, and we want to convince everyone that it's really important. That's why it's in the heart of the company. And I think two things are really interesting to share. One thing is that please make mistakes, because if you want that people take initiative in the company, because we think that it's really important that people take initiative and do things themselves, you need to remind the people that it's okay that you make mistakes, and please do so, because then you develop yourself, you grow as a person, and also the company gets a step further. That's one part, and the other part we really like is we are a smaller company, and one thing that's really great is that there's more bonding between teams, persons. So we really want to also get people enthusiastic to do things together. So working together, think of new solutions together, share knowledge together. That makes the company thrive faster, and it's also more fun to do it together.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good example. For us, these are, by the way, the Homerun values right there. Keep your balance is a really important one for us. We really want that work and life integrate seamlessly, and that it's not one or the other for our company. So as one of our unique selling points, we kind of have this value, and we illustrate it by telling people about how flexible we actually are. We have a 4-day work week at Homerun, so everyone gets paid for 5 days, but works 4, because we noticed that quite a lot of people have caretaking responsibilities and really helps them out. Or for example, talking about myself, I really wanted to move to Spain, and that would have meant a couple of years ago that I would have to quit my job and find a new one. But with Homerun, I was actually able to move to Spain while staying in my job, which is something really cool for me. And now there's other people following suit, so maybe we'll open a second office. But yeah, these kinds of things are all things that you can interrogate within your company, within your team, and then tell about in your job descriptions, essentially.
And it keeps people at your company, I guess, because that's also what you mean.
Yeah, that's the retention part as well, of course. Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah, I think this is something we just talked about, actually. We've always been saying hiring is a team sport. Hiring is not a side hustle, because Theo was telling me that he does a lot of the hiring, and it's quite a lot of work, as we all know. And within my team, we have really embedded it in the team by now that everyone feels responsible and is also held accountable. And a good way to do this is if you're working with something like OKRs or any other goal setting system, make hiring part of that. If you need to find a new colleague in Q1, then it should be someone's objective. Someone should be held accountable for that. And then they can also make time for hiring. That's the most important part, because it does take a lot of time. It costs a lot of money, and bad hires also cost a lot of money. So in the end, you can also make a business case to add all the hiring activities into your goal setting system. I think that's
maybe a question about this, Rita. What I really see is that people are not doing often an hiring process. They don't really know what to do. So what can team members do contribute to the hiring process? How can you do that?
Yeah, I think if you have a hiring process, you need to map it out, write everything down, and crowdsource that within your team as well, and train people, obviously, interview training, unbiased hiring training, those kind of things, sit in on interviews, or even, we sometimes work with like a teaching actress who you can kind of do fake, like certain difficult talks with, or interviewing training. So you can really train people up so they feel comfortable doing it. And for example, the second part here, the creative ways to find candidates, is another good one where the team can get involved. For usually a lot of people are part of some communities. Let's say you have a designer there's a good chance that your designer is part of some Slack group full of designers or something else. I myself, I am part of so many people communities by now. And that's also where you can find candidates, or people go to meetups, right? So you can also really encourage them to go to meetups and start talking to people to scout possible new colleagues. Or have like sourcing parties where you sit down, you look at LinkedIn profiles together with your team, and then you can craft outreach emails. You don't have to stalk potential candidates, but it's nice if they have written blog posts to write them an email and say, hey, I've seen what you've written, I was really impressed by it, and just make it personal. And if that comes from the team lead, the candidate will be much more likely to reply than if it's a random recruiter that just says, hey, I saw your profile on LinkedIn, are you up for a chat?
That's one of the main reasons why I reach out to people. We saw that we tried out recruiters, but then people don't reply, and you don't get the conversation started because you also want to know who is that person, what does he need, or what is his expectation, where do he wants to go with his career. It really helps to do the contact yourself. Yeah.
And I just
you were telling
put
about
this one in because I was talking about because you're so to say, you're not looking for a one night stand, you're looking for a relationship. When you look for a candidate, and you look for an equal relationship, so you want to find the ideal person for the job. And that's how it's fine. You can move to the next slide. The way I approach our employee experience at Homerun is I approach it as I would approach a product, like building a product, because that requires continuous improving, and so does your candidate experience. So in this scenario, our candidates, they are my customers, and I'm trying to get these customers to sign up for Homerun as an employee, right? So I want them to join, which is why I need to add new features to our hiring experience, and I need to get feedback. So during the hiring process, I also ask them how they experience the interviews or the process. Once someone joined, I do the same. So if you build a really good product, in this case, the product is your hiring process, you will attract better candidates. Those candidates will turn into employees, and they will be good employees because it was the right people. And the return on investment will be higher as well. So you can kind of see this as a sales funnel. The product marketing that you would do for Hooray is just you do employer branding for your hiring process. You do acquisition to find customers. You do recruitment to find candidates. Then your customer will decide if they want to purchase. The candidate will decide if they will accept your offer and sign up. Then you have the onboarding and all these kinds of things. You have referrals from employees that are already here. You might have experienced churn. There's good and bad churn, right? Customers that leave because they need a more because they have so many employees, they might need a different HR tool. We experience the same at Homerun, right? Sometimes someone churns, but they still love your product. It's just not the best product for them anymore. And that's the same with employees. And then you can turn them into ambassadors. So they will tell others about you. And all these steps, they can be measured, which means that as HR, you have a huge budget. And sometimes HR managers don't realize that. But I bet in your company, the employee cost is probably your highest cost. It usually is. And that's in the hands of HR. And the benefits and the offers and the outings, and it's so much money. So you really want someone that takes good care of that and that measures what they do and that looks back and makes the process more efficient. So I think it's time for HR to really demand the seat at the table and take the time to build a very robust hiring process.
Awesome that you see it as a sales funnel, as a product. What kind of metrics do you follow then? And maybe you have one or two examples that you could start with.
Yeah, I think it's always important to find the right metric for you. So, for example, a lot of companies look at time to hire, which is a metric that we don't use at Homerun because we prefer taking more time to hire if it leads to the right candidate in the end, because we'd rather have someone stay on longer. And we've noticed that a more thorough process leads to that. But then there's also just your ENPS, would employees recommend working for you? There's things for example, from onboarding to employee and to the next promotion, you can track that within your company. You can also look at the happiness score. After the first 30 days, for example, I always conduct a one-on-one with a new hire to see if the expectation management was right. For example, if the hiring process matched what they eventually ended up working, like if the position is what they thought it would be, and all these kinds of things. So there's different types of metrics that you can look at. Churn, obviously, how long does it take for someone to leave? All these different types, and then you can analyze them and see what makes the most sense for you to improve.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, so mapping the journey, super important. That's what I just talked about. So you can write everything down and then add the different steps. Something I found really important is to believe in everyone. What does that mean? I think it's important to not dismiss people if they maybe don't have the right certificate or the right diploma, because not all jobs actually need that. And I think a lot of companies still are very rigid in, if you hire a surgeon, obviously you want them to have gone to medical school. I fully agree. But for lots of jobs, that's not necessary. This little screenshot is from Homerun. It's an avatar feature that we have. So we see avatars instead of people's pictures, because people get easily biased by seeing someone's picture. And you can use tools like eCulture to have unbiased assessments and all these kinds of things. There's many ways of making your process as inclusive as possible.
Nice. Cool. And maybe I want to add one thing to map the journey. So you're making the process, I guess, and you write it down. And if you have a process, you can optimize different steps. And if you optimize every step with 10% only, then you gain like 100% improvement of your process. So working with a process and thinking in small steps really helps to get improvement also started.
Yeah, and if you know the process at the start of of hiring someone, then you can explain it to them. And if it doesn't match with their expectations, they can also decide to not go through with it. And that's something that also helps you, because you will waste less time, essentially. So also in that sense, don't ever sell hot air. What I mean by that is don't be too vague. If someone's salary expectations is something that you cannot match because it doesn't fit in your budget, and just tell them, then you're not wasting anyone's time. Nothing is more frustrating than doing 3 interviews thinking you found the perfect candidate and then start talking about money, but still happens. So just thought I'd mention that.
We had that more than often, so trying to do that really quickly in like the first 2 times you speak to each other, try to be open about it to each other. What are the range of your salary, or is there an expectation from the candidate? Because it's not a good thing. Also not for the people in the team that you're talking with someone and it continues. Then sorry, we couldn't do it. It's not the best way to get the energy right about the vacancy.
Yeah, exactly. And next up, I wanted to talk a little bit about interviewing and onboarding after that. I think onboarding, that's something that you guys know a lot about. Interviewing with purpose is something that I find really important. What do I mean by that? Know what you're going to ask, how the process will look like. And also, once you've had the interview, something that we've been doing for years now, which works really well, is after the interview, people don't talk to each other. So if you and your colleague have an interview with a candidate, once it's over, it's really tempting to start talking about the candidate, but that's where bias comes in. And that's really not great, because we are all biased, we know it, and that's not a problem. It's how we handle that. So train your team after the interview, go your separate ways and write everything down. Really important to block some time immediately after every interview, so you can get to writing down everything as soon as possible. And that way you can actually find out a lot about specific behaviors and competencies. On the next slide, what I mean by that, how to uncover, sorry, that wasn't the slide
Oh, there's one in between.
There's one in between, but that's a good one as well. I think we just talked about that. So you had a
Yeah,
few
so
very
if
good
you did
pointers.
if you did the offer to the candidate, then you more or less know the person is coming to work at your company because you know about salary already because you discussed that. The terms are quite clear. So it's important to really start with a good onboarding part. You see from a lot of other surveys that almost 30% will go away from the company in the first half year if the onboarding is not done right.
Mm.
So please be aware of that and think about the process, how you can onboard someone. And even before someone starts with their onboarding, you have sort of a pre-onboarding phase. So someone took the contract and 2-3 months later he will start. Try to get a couple of contact moments with the new hire during the 2-3 months. For example, send them a card with the team, invite them to a Friday afternoon meeting, so that he or she is involved in the team, in the organization already before the person even starts.
Yeah, and I like what you just said about the 2 or 3 months, because that sounds quite long, right? If you think, oh, I have a new hire who's going to start in 2 or 3 months. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, what we try to do after the hiring phase is that we ask to the new hire, hey, how long do you need with your current employer before you want to get started? Because yeah, maybe someone can start in 1 month, but sometimes someone is really loyal to their current employer. And then I really love to say, you take your time. Do you need 2 months? That's fine by us. We want to have a long-term relation. So please have a good feeling about how you want to close your current job. And not right away jump on the new train. And if someone needs a little bit more time, that says something about the person, that he also wants to be loyal to his employer, and that's something I really love, that he would be loyal to me as well in the future. So yeah, give a little space. If it takes an extra month, it's okay.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a really good point. A friend of mine once told me that she wasn't hired because she was pregnant, and they were worried that, of course, the baby needs to come out, and then she would miss a couple of months. And I found that such a shame. I mean, also, it's basically illegal to do it that way, but unfortunately, it still happens, although it shouldn't. But it's very short-sighted, because in the end, this person might stay with you for 5 years. So those 3 months that the person will be at home caring for the new baby, it's nothing compared to what you might get. So
Yeah,
I think there's a good point to be a bit patient and look at it in the long term.
don't rush things at all.
uh, yeah, so to go back to the interviewing just a little bit, and I was saying about scorecards and writing everything down, and that can be tricky because you really need to find out a lot of things in an interview. So what we've done is we have loads and loads of questions that you can use for your interviews, and you don't have to go in being a robot. But if you ask someone a question, I'll just read a question so you have an example. If you ask someone, tell me about a disagreement with a coworker or manager, but looking back on this, you felt that you were wrong. It might sound like a complicated question, but it will tell you about someone's conflict resolution skills, about empathy, about communication skills, about how they're open to feedback or not, if they're willing to speak up. And all these things, you can later see if you got the signal that you needed. So we at Homerun constantly talk about getting a signal. And there's so many questions that are tailored to give you answers about certain behaviors or values. So while you can chat about all kinds of things, it's important to have a couple of questions in there that really tell you what you need to know. And if you don't know, don't write something down because you think that's what the person would have said. If it didn't come up, then you need another interview, basically. And then there's also the what not to ask, which I put in here because unfortunately, some things still get asked that people really shouldn't ask. And those are things like, don't ask someone's age. That happened to my husband a few years ago, that someone really asked, oh, you look young. How old are you? It's really inappropriate, and it doesn't really matter. Marital status, current salary, all these kinds of things. If people offer up information, if they tell you I'm a mom of two, that's great. And then you'll know something about the person. But it doesn't mean that they will need more time off or that you don't know anything about them. So let people tell you about themselves and don't fish for information.
Yeah.
And I think the last point you just covered with the pre-onboarding, which is really important, and I think it's gaining more traction too.
Yeah, and in the pre-onboarding, it's really nice if the new hire, already get in touch with team members, so that they have a smooth start in a warm welcome. That's something we think is important.
Transparency. Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics. That's also something we asked about in the survey. We actually asked, how do you plan on improving employee retention in 2024? And communication and transparency came up next to pre-boarding, which we just talked about. And yeah, more than half of the respondents agreed that transparency is really important, and that I think it should start in the hiring process. And it doesn't have to be something like making all the salaries transparent on day one or anything like that. You can start really small, but ask people what they want transparency about. Do they want to know how decisions are made? Do they want to know what the monthly recurring revenue is? There's all different kinds of transparency metrics as well. So it sounds scary and it's become a bit of a buzzword, but it's basically about honest communication.
Yeah, so I guess you also need to tell more about everything that's within the function or within the vacancy, and not only the cool things you're going to do. Otherwise, you will not have a good start together, and then it will not take long, and someone will leave quite fast.
Yeah. It's all about realistic expectations. I think we've all seen job posts that list things that shouldn't really be in there. Well, we're in the Netherlands, or Homerun and HoorayHR in the Netherlands, but generally in Europe, there's a lot of good benefits that are mandated by law already. So it's not really special to tell people that they are allowed to call in sick, or that they maybe have 20 or 25 holidays a year, or that they get a lunch break, because basically you have to offer these things. So I think it's much more important to think about smaller stuff, like what kind of opportunities are there within the company to learn from others, mentoring, or how do you celebrate wins, or how do you deal with mistakes, these kinds of things. That's much more important for employees to know. And I'm not saying you shouldn't say that you have regular pizza nights or whatever it may be, because that's nice too, but it's not what will make someone stick around for 5 years. So yeah, you can start really, really small. I think that's why it might seem scary, because we're not all big tech with all these huge benefits, but people also don't need them. Talk to your team what they need, what would be important to them. And maybe you will find out that you have a lot of caretakers in your team and they would benefit from flexibility, or you find out that a lot of people are saving for the down payment for the first house, so maybe they don't want to be part of a pension scheme, they would rather have more salary. Like, there's all kinds of things. If you lock yourself up in your high tower and work on a benefit scheme without talking to people, they won't be able to tell you what they need.
Good examples. Oh wow, one too fast.
Yeah. I think the first one is a good one, because no one is perfect. You just said, things happen to you guys as well, having a few interviews, and then the salary topic came up. We've had the same kind of things, right? You talk to people, you forgot about something, or you might want to make something prettier than it actually is. You tell people, oh yeah, we're already working on that, and maybe you're not actually working on that. That's okay. I always try to tell people the truth. So if you don't have a performance review system, don't tell them you're already working on it. Or if you don't let people work from abroad, don't say, yeah, maybe we'll think about it, or something like that. I think vulnerability is a really powerful tool.
And if you put it in your vacancy, also make sure that you involve your team and share that is a benefit that is really for everyone, and not only because it's in the vacancy. We had something like working abroad for a month. I think that's also an example. And that was in the vacancy because we were looking for someone from Germany, because we expanded to Germany, and we thought, hey, that would be nice for that person. And someone else were asking in the team that was working already. Oh, can I work from Spain for a month? Yes. So it's good to understand what kind of benefits you give and how do you embed it in your team and that everyone can use
Yeah.
it. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I think it's really good to learn from that, because it happens to all of us and it's okay. It's how you resolve these things that counts. So in the end, we will all make mistakes. It's just what we do with those and if we learn from them. I've also heard from someone who looked at a job post for a colleague and said, okay, we're looking for someone that will be more junior than me, but the salary advertised in the ad is actually higher than my salary. And that's something that's a really good way of losing trust, and the cost of lost trust is expensive because turnover is expensive. It takes 6 months or more for business to break even on a new hire. So if someone leaves before that, you're only out of money. So it's a real shame to do that.
Cool. Nice. Because of time.
Yeah,
This is
time to take action.
exactly. If people have questions, please let us know in the chat, or you can always connect with us via LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to find us. So just look for Rita or me, Theo, and we can always get in touch and answer your questions there. I really hope you enjoyed the webinar and get inspiration out of it. And hopefully see you next time. And of course, we will send the link to view the whole webinar back. And maybe we add some things next to it, which also been discussed during the webinar. Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot. Yeah, what Theo said, just reach out. I always love to nerd out about all these topics, so happy to chat.